Welcome back to Mobile Rolling, and we're into part two of a very interesting interview with DB. When did you leave? So you worked for, I know you did, you worked for the Trotting Weekly for 6, 7 years?
Yeah, harness racing rider there for,
6 or
I
7.
reckon, gee whiz, for a
7,
fair
8 years?
while.
7, 8
actually.
years or what?
Yeah, I reckon nearly a decade. Yeah.
So how long since you've written in the local papers here or done anything?
Gee, I haven't written. Now, the last article I would have written on the trots would have been for the tap form. Because I went to tap form after the Tizer.
Okay.
Of course, David Bashir, and tied up heavily with the Port Adelaide Football Club and a few famous hotels around town.
Yep.
He was actually the director, and Graham Fisher. He was my boss at that point. Steve Davison, you remember Big Steve?
He used to do the dogs and that too, didn't he?
So, Mal Jones.
Yeah, Mal's.
He used to ride as well.
Did have the
But
Tinner
that- I'm
Beat.
going
I
back
don't know
in
if he's
the-
still got it or not.
Yeah, the late 90s now, I reckon. We finished there at tap form. When the government sold the TAB, suddenly we were all out of a job.
20-something years ago, wasn't it? Yeah.
That was
Probably
late 90s.
that's probably the start of the demise, I'd say.
Yeah.
So with harness racing, you've seen a lot of champions. Who's some of the champion trainers, drivers, horses, racers, whatever?
Well, look, we've been blessed in this country with the horses that we've seen, particularly in the gallops and, of course, the harness racing. The best horse I ever saw was Cardigan Bay. And he went on to prove that when he went to America, and they had a champion over there called Romeo Hanover. He went over and blew him away. And if he'd have been sound, he would have been even better. But he was campaigning during the one of the Inter-Dominions in '62, I reckon. Might have been in Perth. I reckon it was in Perth. And there was a horse called James Scott from New South Wales, who was I think he was from New South, might have been WA, but he was a terrific horse. And he won 3 heats, right? And Cardigan Bay won 2 heats, and both of them blew their opposition away. But prior to the 3rd heat, Cardigan Bay fell over and busted his hip, which he had problems with for the rest of his career. But it didn't stop him from winning race after race. And James Scott went on and won that Inter-Dominion in '62, and then Cardigan Bay came to Adelaide in '63. And you know, that year they had about 40,000 at Wayville. Can you imagine 40,000? Because I was there as a late teenager. And you couldn't.
Well, I can remember when we did the back to Wayville, not the one from last year, but the one from the original one from 48 years after the first time. I think it was 2019 or whatever. We had about 8,000 there, and you couldn't move.
Yeah.
So if you times that by 5,
That's right.
they would have been literally on the roof.
They were hanging off the concrete stand. They were. I'm telling you, they were everywhere. Luckily I got down close to the winning post, and it was the most amazing Inter-Dominion of all time. A horse called Idle Raider was the one that was tipped to beat Cardigan Bay. It was a cat and mouse between the two of them, and there was a fall going into the back straight the last time, and Smokey Eric with the late Bill Shin, a great trainer driver for Australia over the years, and obviously a South Aussie, and he went down and fell over Idle Raider, which had gone rough in its gear. It was sitting in the death, and Cardigan Bay had pulled out 3 wide to go around him, and he went rough in his gear, and he went down, and Smokey Eric went over the top, and Bill Shin come catapulting out of the cart. Nobody knew what had happened until they went past the winning post, because there was Bill Shin sitting in the cart of a horse called Seal, C-E-L-E. Sealy, whatever it was.
Yep.
And that was trained and driven by Charlie Parsons. And the 2 biggest shocks were Shinny, that he landed in the cart, And Parsons, when he was going down the back, he reckoned he was going to be a chance in the finish. Next thing, bang, and there were two of them. So he had to pull the horse up. Yeah, you can't.
So that was Cardigan Bay.
1963 Cardigan Bay.
So what about some of the like I know that Craig went and had a little stint over with Vinnie Knight at one stage.
Yes, yeah.
So who's some of the personalities that you've either like met personally and had dealings with? I mean, we've all walked past someone special, but it's a bit different if you actually know them or.
Well, I mean, Vinnie Knight was a real character. I mean, he
never been the same, has it?
Sorry.
Never been the same.
No, the industry hasn't been the same.
Since, yeah.
It's the biggest funeral I've ever seen because I obviously went over there because Craig was working there at the time when Vinnie supposedly committed Harry Carey. There's different stories about that, whether that was the case or not. But I can still remember Stewie Lang ringing me the morning after. They found him that morning. And Stewie Lang rang me. Remember Stewie?
Yeah, Stewie was
tied up with the
harness race in Victoria and the dogs, I think. The Gallops, no, he's in the Gallops now.
Yeah.
Stuart Lang, Lang.
And I was sitting in the old building at the Advertiser at the time, there off Weymouth Street at the corner, next to the switchboard, where my wife worked for a while actually. And the phone went and I answered the phone and it was Stewie, and he said, I've got some bad news for you. Well, fair dinkum, when he told me that, you could have...
No one could believe it, did they?
No, I couldn't believe it. Because the first thing you say is when somebody, so-and-so died or dead or passed, and you go, oh, bullshit, and it's just a natural...
It's a bit like when Lady Di passed.
Yeah,
everyone remembers where they were.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So you had Vinnie. What about some of the others? You would have known some characters here in South Australia for sure.
Yeah, well, I've got to mention Barry Purdon from New Zealand. He was a character.
Big Barry.
Big Barry. The initials were BP, and of course we all knew that the Quiet Achiever BP, and he was the Quiet Achiever. I mean, as a professional, you wouldn't get boo at him, but. No. Get him at a party and kicking a few goals and that, and he was a character, a real character. He thought I was an idiot because I picked him up one night. I came out Melbourne, Moonee Valley, and he was waiting there. This was about midnight after the last, and I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "I'm waiting for a cab." I said, "What? The great BP waiting for a cab?" "Oh, I'll give you a lift." Because I didn't know my way around Melbourne. We got lost.
Last time?
Yeah. Eventually I found it where he was, and then I had to find my way back. He was not far from the airport, Essendon Airport, and I was at Dandenong, so I had no idea. But anyway, that's another story. But
that's why you're not a taxi driver, DB. Your talent's in other areas.
I know my way around Adelaide, though. I mean, when I was doing the circulation business, I used to know most of the suburbs.
So we'll just... so you're well known for your... well, there's a few things I know about you. I believe you did you were the original boundary rider at the football, doing the interviews, and I believe that you had 50 years on radio.
I finished
with the football.
Yeah, being involved broadcasting the footy 2 years ago, 2018. I did my last broadcast. That was over here at Oval Avenue. Life FM gave me the opportunity to do that because RPH, who I'd been calling for, had pulled the pin earlier, and they got me on, which I was most appreciative of. And it was sad. It was sad in a way, but the end of a
all
long
good things
era.
come to an end.
A long era.
Now you also had a couple of things. You have your famous. Intercontinental Cup, we'll call it, which you often call at a few venues, and then you've also were well known for. I think they crossed to you at the football one day when it was rather cool at Adelaide Oval, and
back in those days, it was, I don't know why it was.
There was no red button
because by the time they crossed to me, it was about 6 o'clock at night. And I was last cab off the rank, and fair dinkum, I was freezing. I had no lights. I was freezing because I was doing my frit, sitting there freezing to death, and they costed me. And I said, "Well, thank you very much, but I've got to be honest with you. I've been sitting here that long. My Niagaras are like little ice cubes. Well, fair dinkum. Do you reckon I didn't get any flack over that?
So the convent the convent school didn't really work much, did it? When we think about it.
But there was an article in the paper about it, and from that, for the rest of that season, people would be walking past after the "Help for Niagara at ADB."
Now, this is a family show, so we'll go on to the fact that I believe you've been friends for, I don't know, 50 years at least. KG?
Yeah.
Kenneth
George
Cunningham. Yeah. That he had, I think he had a heart attack, and I think you might have saved his life. Is that right?
Yeah, back in that.
Well, you might if you did, because otherwise he wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Well, 2000.
Tell us what happened then.
2007, I reckon it was, a long time ago now. And we used to walk every morning down by the beach, and he'd actually been complaining about a pain in his chest for some time. I said, well, go and see a doctor, go and see a specialist, you know. Yeah. Of course, never did. And then finally he did. And the morning we were walking, I said, have you been to see that flaming doctor yet? And he said, yeah, I went yesterday. He said, what did he say? He said, well, everything was all right. He said, but he noticed there was a bit of a problem there. I said, well, what? He said, next time, he said he's going to investigate more thoroughly, you know. And I said, oh, okay. Well, you wouldn't want to know. We're walking along. Normally when you walked along, you know, there'd be a squillion people go past in both directions. G'day, Cage. Occasionally, g'day, DB, but mainly g'day, Cage. But this day...
I might have thought you was his carer. Might have thought you was his carer, DB.
Yeah, maybe. But we're actually discussing the Melbourne Cup, and that was the year that the two Japanese horses run first and second. So we were trying to pick out, trifectas and exactas and that. And I've gone down in a screaming heap, and he's gone down the screaming heap. I went down later, and I'm thinking, oh no, you know, because he let. I was talking to him. Next thing I turn around, he's on his hands and knees, looking up at me. His eyes are rolling. Said, "I think I'm gone, DB. I think I'm gone." Of course, you know, I'm panicking. I'm like, "Oh hell!" So I've rushed back to him, you know, and I'm looking for some people to help. Not a soul. Not a soul. You know, the high-rise apartments. You know, people were on the balconies sometimes. No, couldn't find anyone. And I thought, oh, what am I going to do? And I had one of those flip-top mobiles back then. So you had to, because at this stage, because he'd had that problem, I'm pumping his chest like this, and I'm trying to flick the damn mobile open. So, and I couldn't get it open. And in the end, I bloody ended up getting him. He'd come to, you know, because he was dead. I felt there was no pulse either, and he was gone. He was one out, one back, and going nowhere. And I thought, oh shit, you know, because I'm panicking, you know, really panicking. And I thought, well, I'll do this, and I'll start pumping, and still trying to open the mobile. And he's come to. He's going, oh, shit, DB, what happened? I said, Cage, you've had a heart attack. You've had a heart attack. He said, oh shit, I feel all right now. I said, well, I don't care. I said, you've had a heart attack. And he said, well, he stood up, and he said, well, let's keep going. I said, what? He wanted to keep walking. I said, Cage, sit down, you're not going anywhere. And then I rang his wife, his late wife, Sandra, and she came and picked him up, and we actually walked very slowly to the Henley Square, which wasn't all that far. She picked us up there because he couldn't drive the car down the walkway. No. And we went back home, and KG'd taken the gear off and gone up and had a shower. So in the meantime, Sandra's ringing the doctor, and the doctor says, where's Ken now? She said, he's up having a shower, and I could hear it, and I'm deaf. And I could hear over the phone, get him out of the bloody shower! The worst thing you could do. And of course, Sandra's rushed up, pulled him out of the shower, and of course then the rest is history. The ambulance came, and yeah, and that was that. But about a month later, might have been 2 weeks anyway, because I used to play tennis with you actually, up at
Dominic's.
Yeah, Dominic's place.
And, like David Sharp. No one told me he played Linton Cup.
Yeah, pennant or whatever.
Linton Cup, which is the one down from, that's a junior Wimbledon.
Yeah, that's right.
I wonder why I could hit a ball.
Yeah, and I was driving to play tennis one Wednesday night there, and everything just seemed strange. Things were spinning, and I was getting double vision, and God knows what. And I got there, and I thought, look, I can't play tonight. There's something wrong, you know. And that was actually a minor heart tremor or whatever, because the following week I collapsed in a screaming heap myself with bleeding on the brain, and I was in hospital myself for about 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay. Oh, now you're okay.
And they found out that initially I thought it was leuticya, and they took me to Ashford, but then halfway through my stay there, they rushed me down into the Memorial.
Okay.
Yeah, so and I was in intensive care for 4 or 5 days. Yeah. So I've been a bit lucky, Croc.
You've been lucky. You've given a lot of enjoyment, a lot of entertainment to a lot of people. I know that your guest speaker nights and that have been legendary, to say the least. So we'll just
that race might have had something to do with that.
We'll just end on a couple of quick ones. You said the best horse you've seen is Cardigan Bay. He's the best trainer you've seen.
Oh, yeah.
Talking harness racing.
I mean, yeah, that's a very hard question, but
that's what we're here for.
I got, like obviously Bob Knight, or whether it was Vinny or Bob, I don't know, but obviously for their record. But Brian Hancock's record is outstanding. I mean, we've had some great trainers here as well. I mean, their records, their method might have been your Albie Holbertons and the Webster brothers, and even Jeffrey himself. Rossi Sugars, of course, who was a great driver along with Jeffrey, naturally turned out to be great drivers and trainers. And
I mean, I think it's well documented.
Yeah,
we're a breeding ground not only for national football, but the horses and trainers and
the
drivers.
Justice boys came from nothing.
John and
Lance.
Yeah.
And Josie was the mainstay of those boys.
Josie,
what she did for those boys was unbelievable. She was fantastic. Mum, good old mum. Eh? I mean, all got mums, and but we've been blessed. In South Australia in particular. One year in the Inter Dominion, the year that Bold David won the Inter Dominion at the Showgrounds, was it? Or was it Moonee Valley? Alfie Simon.
Showgrounds.
He actually raced here the year before in '69 when Richmond Lass won the Inter Dominion, beat Eddie Oscar.
Well, it was only 3 years ago that
Tactile.
It was only 3 years ago that Smolder won the Inter Dominion in Perth and came and raced here.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
In the Cup after.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Anyway, poor old. I know you started the original sort of broadcast of mobile rolling or sports shows with.
Yeah, it used to be a column in the paper. Yeah.
And no, but I'm talking about the television ones. And now it's switched around where you're on the couch and Maxie's doing the producing. So I'm probably going to get the wind up. So I think we better leave it at that. Yeah. And thank you for your time today. And I'm sure that it'll be something that everyone will be looking forward to.
Yeah, well, obviously a lot of harness racing people are watching this program, so Maxie tells me, and for all those people that know me, I wish you all the best. You've been part of my life for so long. In fact, there was a time when Lynn was, of course, heavily involved in Bottrich. He was the secretary treasurer, and we met so many wonderful people in harness racing, and I do know how hard they work, because I had to help Craig out a few times, and honestly, for the amount of work that harness racing people put in, they should get a lot more out of it. I mean, quillions more.
All right, thanks for your time, DB, and that's all from Mobile Rolling. Thank you.